Good evening and welcome to a new edition of Political Agenda. Tonight we will discuss the latest developments in the Libyan scene and the warrant of arrest against Colonel al-Gaddafi and his son Saif al-Islam and his intelligence chief Abdullah al-Sanusi by the International Criminal Court. The Libyan crisis has entered a new phase following the warrant of arrest issued by International Criminal Court, the ICC, against Gaddafi for crimes against humanity, but an African Union summit decided on Friday, 1st of July 2011, that the African nations will not cooperate to execute the International Criminal Court. They said the warrant of arrest. The summit in Ethiopia, Guinea, or the Equatorial Guinea, said the warrant issued on Monday hampered efforts to find a negotiated political settlement to the Libyan matter. The African Union statement suggested that Addis Ababa, the Ethiopian capital, would host talks between conflict parties regarding reaching a ceasefire and forming a democratic government. This proposal was presented to representatives of Gaddafi and opposition parties who attended the 53-nation African Union Summit Conference. Tonight's edition, we will cover the latest developments in the Libyan question. The United States, the United Kingdom, NATO and the European Union welcomed the International Criminal Court decision of issuing an arrest warrant against Libya's leader Muammar Gaddafi and two of his closest aides. The warrant has eradicated any legitimacy left for Colonel Gaddafi. More details in the following report and will come for further discussion of the topic.
You want democracy? We are ready. You want election? We are ready. You want what? New constitution? We are ready. Ceasefire? We are ready. But the other side is refusing all the time. But to tell my father to leave the country, it's a joke. We will never surrender. We will fight. It's our country.
These were the words of a desperate man, the son of the Libyan leader retreating the words of his father. Gaddafi will stay in Libya. In fact, Colonel Muammar, his son Saif al-Islam and Abdullah al-Sanusi, head of the Libyan intelligence services, have no option but to stay in Tripoli. The International Criminal Court has issued a warrant of arrest against the three of them 7 days ago.
So what we are trying to do now is to collect more evidence about the rapes and what happened in the center of detentions. And if we need that someone else had to be added, maybe we add 1 or 2 names for these charges, if we present the charges.
In a nutshell, Gaddafi has been officially branded a criminal. And he will not be able to get out of it. He will not be able to travel in the world to anywhere. He will be arrested like any other international criminal.
NATO forces operating in Libyan skies have no mandate to arrest suspects. Nonetheless, Libyan authorities, whether in the National Transitional Council in Benghazi or in Tripoli, are required to arrest Colonel Gaddafi according to the arrest warrant.
It is not for NATO to enforce that warrant. That is for the appropriate authorities. Our mandate is to protect civilians from attack. The decision of all NATO allies and partners to extend our operation for another 90 days from today is a clear signal of that determination.
Gaddafi's options are non-existent, as Mustafa Abdel Jalil, the chairman of the Libyan opposition National Transitional Council, offer that the Libyan leader is free to retire in Libya. If he resigns from his position as leader of the country, is not applicable anymore. Some analysts believe that Gaddafi will spend the rest of his days in hiding as a fugitive.
I don't think Gaddafi will have a chance to leave the country. I think he will be caught by his own people. He's now acting like Osama bin Laden, sending cassettes from underground. He doesn't appear in public. I can't see any way he can appear in public again. It almost will be a miracle if he does, but I doubt very much so. Someone with such blood in his hand will come back.
The British Prime Minister David Cameron hinted after the arrest warrant was issued that it's only a matter of time before the regime of Colonel Gaddafi collapses and the colonel faces justice.
Time is on our side, and we will keep going with this, and the pressure is turning up all the time. I think you can see that with the desertions from Gaddafi's regime. You can see it with the pressure he's under in the west of the country, where pockets of resistance that I think people assumed would be snuffed out are growing and growing in strength and challenging his authority. So I'm absolutely confident that we can keep this pressure up, we can maintain this mission for as long as is necessary.
We have done exactly what we said to do under a UN mandate, and we have protected thousands of lives in the process. And as a consequence, a guy who was a state sponsor of terrorist operations against the United States of America is pinned down, and the noose is tightening around him.
African Union attempts to mediate between the National Transitional Council and Gaddafi have failed, despite the optimism shown by the South African President Jacob Zuma in a press conference after an African Union summit in Equatorial Guinea.
We are very happy that we have reached this point, that we can now say very soon we will be launching the talks in Addis Ababa. And we believe we will get the necessary support from everyone.
The International Criminal Court's arrest warrant of Colonel Gaddafi is the last nail in the coffin for the Libyan leader. And there can only be one outcome to the current crisis. That is the arrest and trial of Gaddafi. Rani Mohanlal for Political Agenda, London.
Well, to discuss the topic furthermore, I have along with me in the studio Dr. Ibrahim Nahas, Professor of Political Science at King Saud University. And from Paris, Ali Nasruddin, a writer and political analyst. And last but not the least, from Washington, D.C., Ali Yunus, a writer and a political analyst. Let me start the program from Washington with Mr. Yunus. First of all, my question, the regular question, how do you interpret the arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court against the Libyan leader Muammar al-Gaddafi?
Well, first of all, definitely the arrest warrant is a serious blow to Colonel Gaddafi, and I think it has put him in a corner along with his son and the chief of intelligence services of Libya. And this is, in my opinion, is a point of no return to Gaddafi. But it's not easy to have him arrested. We have an example of the president of Sudan, Omar Hassan al-Bashir.
Yes.
He has the ICC has issued an international arrest warrant for him, and he is still in power, bargaining his time with the political crisis either in south of Sudan or in the east with Darfur. So Gaddafi, although the ICC, there's a warrant on him by ICC, but I see it is very difficult for this warrant to be enforced either by the international community or by the African community states who clearly, as the report has said, they will be reluctant or even opposed to enforce this warrant. That's one. Number two, the ICC warrant in itself is not mandatory for member states of the UN to enforce it. Only in a case that Gaddafi has traveled in a country where the signatory to the International Criminal Convention, they will be obligated to enforce it if they choose so. But Gaddafi might as well stay outside, stay inside Libya, follow the steps of al-Bashir, and never leaves Libya, and no one will be arresting him. But he'll be very limited, and I think his days will be numbered because he cannot live the life of a fugitive inside his own country.
But let me stay with you. But al-Bashir does not face the same problems that Colonel Gaddafi is facing in his country. I mean, Bashir, his people is standing with him, while on the other hand, Gaddafi still fighting his own people. Let me move this question to London with Mr. Nasruddin. In your point of view, Mr. Nasruddin, what is the impact of such decision on the Libyan events?
At the beginning, I think it's a very psychological impact. And on the other hand, also, once Gaddafi knows that he is the most wanted person in the whole world, I don't know how he's going to react to this warrant of arrest. But you know, I agree with you that you cannot compare the situation of Gaddafi to the situation of al-Bashir in Sudan. Sooner or later, Gaddafi, either he will be arrested or he'll be killed, in my point of view. by his own people. For the time being, it's very difficult for the coalition or for the NATO to impose the warrant of arrest on Gaddafi and his son and his son-in-law. But eventually, if he is still alive in the future, wherever he goes, either he'll be arrested by his own people or he'll be arrested by the international community.
Dr. Ibrahim Nahas, a while ago in the report, Saif al-Islam was speaking, looking with a beard. Probably he haven't shaved in a while. He said, we will do whatever it takes. And if you want a new constitution, we've heard it. In your point of view, isn't it too late? These steps could have been done a long time ago or a few months ago. Do you think the movements or the actions he's talking about can now happen as changing the constitution or have forgiveness among the people, or it is too late?
Yeah, it's too late actually, because since the beginning, he and his father actually, they didn't want to go to this way of good talking to their people actually. Right now he just came to the news and he looks from his view, looking actually very nervous and want to stay in power as possible as he can actually, and to make his father in good position actually. This time not good for anyone from this government to talk in this way, because time is gone and the transitional council actually has many powers right now from inside Libya or from outside, lately by Turkey actually, when they organized the transitional council. So it's too late for Gaddafi and his actually government to stay in power, and nobody will accept them, especially from Libyan people actually, who killed many of them actually.
And are we done with the question? Yeah. Let me go to Washington with Mr. Yunus. Mr. Yunus, also, we've heard Ocampo, the Attorney General or the Attorney of the International Court, said he's looking forward to collect more evidence, especially in the rape situations. And do you think the judges, the three judges of the International Criminal Court, are convinced that there were criminals or crimes against humanity in Libya, and that's why they issued this arrest warrant?
Well, first, when they issue the arrest warrant, obviously there would be preliminary evidence that there were crimes against humanity were committed by Gaddafi's regime. Obviously, the connotations here that Gaddafi gave orders to that, so therefore he is, as a leader of the country, he is formally and officially responsible for the crimes committed against the Libyan people, and those were the charges coming from. Now, those are still charges. He has not been convicted, but obviously the first step is to issue the arrest warrant by the pretrial chamber of the ICC, and then arrest him, bring him to court to face the charges, and then whether he'll be convicted, that's another issue, that's another question, and that's how the mechanism of the court works. But Gaddafi, like you said, it's too late for him to come to a compromise given this the severity of the arrest warrant for him, because it will cripple him from doing any international work or travel. But nevertheless, even NATO cannot even finish the case with Gaddafi. Cannot, air power, an air war can never, finish a war or win a victory for whoever conduct this air war. That we have seen that with Israel attack on South Lebanon or in Gaza or in Iraq when the U.S. conducted an air war. Only ground troops. And at this point, ground troops or ground invasion of Libya has been ruled out by, obviously the U.S. is not interested in war at all with the Libya or any other Middle Eastern country, and NATO is not committed to for a ground troops or ground war. So the hopes are on the ICC warrant to add more pressure and to tighten the noose against Gaddafi and his son, and for the sanctions to be tightened against him and against his allies, and to convince his allies in the African continent to also cooperate with the International Criminal Court and with NATO members so they can bring a resolution to this Libyan crisis.
Let me go to Ali Nasruddin in Paris. Ali, I have two questions. First of all, we heard the spokeswoman of the NATO. She said we will continue attack and the air power against Libya for another 90 days. Do you think, and also she said, well, it's very hard for him. He has to resign. He's going to be caught by his people. So do you think they're counting on the Libyan people while they are just air fighting against Libya?
In one hand, the NATO is continuing bombarding the troops of Gaddafi, and on the other hand also they are helping the transitional council to take to take his place more than he's doing now. You know, we remember a couple of weeks ago there was France has parachuted some arms to the Libyan troops, to the Libyan Transitional Council troops. Now, in my point of view, the air strikes will continue as long as Gaddafi resists. Plus, of course, the troops of the Transitional Council. But for the time being, as I see the things, there is no signs of land war to be launched by the NATO. The NATO will help by airstrikes. Maybe if France and England and maybe, I don't know if United States also will participate, maybe also will help again the troops of the Transitional Council by sending them arms. And in fact, you know, Gaddafi, now he is facing the international, the ICC,
the International
not
Criminal
only
Court.
as a wanted International Criminal Court, not as only as a wanted person, but he lost his legitimacy.
Yes.
Legitimacy. So now the legitimate organization or legitimate entity in Libya is
the National Transitional Council, right?
Transitional Council.
Yes.
And he can buy arms from anywhere available, and he's recognized by the most of the world's
most powerful countries,
known countries, powerful and known, maybe less powerful, but you know he is recognized and he is a
international
legitimate
community
representative of Libya. Yeah, so I don't think that Gaddafi he will have the chance to survive for a long time. Really, maybe the spokesman of the NATO, she said for 90 days, but I don't think it will last 90 days.
Let me go to Dr. Ibrahim Nahas here in the studio. Doctor, the African Union summit has ruled out al-Qaddafi from any agreement to solve the Libyan crisis. Would you highlight on the agreement's key points? The African Union, they have eliminated al-Qaddafi from any future solutions. Do you think that could help?
I don't think they will meet at one point to stand all of the African countries against the Gaddafi, because for 2 points actually. One point that because the history of a Gaddafi with many presidents in Africa, he helped them with money before and with weapons actually before. And the other point, which is very important for African presidents actually, most of them maybe fear in the future they will be in the same position of Gaddafi right now. So they don't want to take right now a decision against the Gaddafi in this way.
I do apologize, my guest in Washington. Let me go back to Paris. I have only 2 minutes with Mr. Nasruddin. And Mr. Nasruddin, I will go back to you. Why did the African Union reject to carry out the ICC arrest warrant against al-Qaddafi in your point of view?
You know, we don't have to forget that Gaddafi is the king of the kings of Africa, you know.
Okay.
And he has lots of investment in Africa, and we all know how things go in African countries. So I think with a little bit of pressure from the international community, the African countries will abandon Gaddafi. We don't have to take their position as a final one and as a, you know, definite position. I think in the future, if really Gaddafi will have to be arrested, maybe he will be arrested first in an African country.
Well, Mr. Ali Nasruddin from Paris, a journalist and a political analyst, thank you for joining me in this first part of the program. The viewers a short pause and we'll continue discussing the Libyan crisis. Welcome back. Let me go to Washington one more time with Ali Yunus. More than 100 days have been passed since NATO has started its airstrikes in Libya, but to no avail. What kind of obstacles or difficulties that hinder NATO of being decisive in your point of view, sir?
Well, I think, I mean, it's quite obvious that in modern warfare, you cannot win a war or depose a regime from power just by air power. And this has not worked. It worked in Serbia to some extent, but only to bring about a different new government, and because of the Serbian people wanted to get rid of Milosevic at that time. But it has never worked historically that only air power. Air power only works in coordination with ground troops, with the bigger war plans to depose a regime and change that regime. Certainly worked in Iraq during Saddam Hussein, air power accompanied by ground troops. And with the mandate of the UN Security Council, let's remember, that only gives, by all necessary means, to quote the verbiage of the UN Security Council resolution on Libya, with specifically to talk about Libyan air power, NATO air power. Because European unions, they're not in a mood to use ground troops to invade another Arab country, and the U.S. certainly is not interested in war at all. And we have seen that from the fight between U.S. Congress and President Obama over his involvement with Libya. And Obama said, we are subordinates to NATO, which means that NATO leads the campaign over Libya. And the European public opinion as well, they're not interested in war against Libya. The only resolution, in my opinion, which, as I have said elsewhere, is either a commandos operation or a decapitation operation in which behind the enemy lines, special forces units could go and assassinate Gaddafi. You know, it might be illegal, but under the U.S. UN Security Council resolution, it could be permissible from an international law perspective. But I don't see, quite honestly, air power alone could finish it. Air power, as mandated by the UN Security Council, only to help the Libyan rebels or the Libyan opposition advance and take over Tripoli and depose Gaddafi. So their role is in assistance, is not the primary vehicle to depose Gaddafi, only to assist the Libyan opposition take over Libya and liberate the Libyan people from Muammar Gaddafi.
Doctor, if the guest in Cairo is ready? Okay. I will go to Dr. Ibrahim. Do apologize. Dr. Ibrahim, also, now both al-Qaddafi and the opposition have their own supporters and defenders. Could this situation lead to a civil war, in your point of view, in Libya?
Yeah, to some extent, it might be. Some people, they call it right now, it's a civil war right now.
East-West.
Yeah, East-West. But in my point of view, isn't like that, because you have right now government is standing, Gaddafi standing, and there is people they want to
In Benghazi.
In Benghazi, they want to demolish that government regime and build a new one. In the future, civil war that between people, they fight for power. No one of them have the highest actually hand. Like right now, Gaddafi has the highest hand.
The upper hand.
The upper hand. Yes. In the future, it depends on NATO actually position or power they use.
But Mr. Yunus in Washington said it's very hard for the land troops to enter, and the United States rejected that proposal. Even the NATO, it's very hard for them to enter land troops right now. So with the situation, with the air superiority of the NATO, but do you think we can reach to a civil war, or it can be solved before it reaches to that point?
I think they will reach to the point before the civil war is gone, that whether Gaddafi actually killed or moved by any way, because the Tripoli people actually they try right now to move against Gaddafi. In the same time, Gaddafi want to control. So most the Libyan people actually stand against this government, who has some people from outside Libya to defend his position actually. For that, when we have maybe 80% of the Libyan people, they against Gaddafi, so I don't think we will have a civil war in the future. The position. If we have maybe different groups inside Libya, that will lead us to civil war. But we don't have that position right now.
Let me go back to Mr. Yunus in Washington, D.C. Mr. Yunus, if we speak about observers of the Libyan upheaval, expect deployment of large quantities of weapon and ammunition inside the country. This may attract fanatical groups beyond the borders to take part in the country's unrest. Your comment in that subject?
Yes, in fact, this was the argument made by Gaddafi and his son from the beginning of the Libyan crisis. And they were trying to project the crisis as a crisis between Al-Qaeda or Al-Qaeda-inspired Islamic rebels or extremists and the legitimacy and the legitimate forces of Libya. And in fact, but nevertheless, it is a legitimate concern. Idris Bibi, the president of Chad, have said interview in Jeune Afrique magazine a few months ago that there were weapons being smuggled through the sub-Saharan Africa and through, taking the routes between Libya, Algeria, Morocco, and the Chad. They have sophisticated and anti-tank weapons reaching that. Obviously, Gaddafi, had a huge arsenal, and he has let loose of all these weapons to everybody to take and keep and trade in that part of Africa. And obviously, he was trying to make a point. His point is, if you're going to attack me, if you're going to depose me, then chaos will spread all over Africa. You will have extremists, you will have Al-Qaeda in Africa, and will be attacking Europe. And also another point he was trying to make is the illegal immigrants, African immigrants who try to cross into Europe. This is a serious and serious threat to European security from their perspective, that they view it as one of the biggest concerns, those illegal immigrants. But as far as Gaddafi is concerned, we had high hopes, and I think the international community had high hopes at the start of the Libyan revolution. People thought that Muammar Gaddafi will fall just like to follow the President Ben Ali in Tunisia, but it did not work that way. Gaddafi is still standing, obviously, 3-4 months later, and he is still fighting back. And obviously, he still holds in Tripoli, and Tripoli is the key. If the Libyan rebels could not take Tripoli within a few months, I think NATO and the alliance might falter. It might disappear. They will either make a decision, either to engage more forcefully by either sending limited ground troops or limited land operations against Gaddafi, or or stand back and negotiate with a bargaining with Gaddafi, similar to al-Bashir, but he had to bargain over the South Sudan, eventually agreeing to partition South Sudan and agreeing to the independence of South Sudan in order to stay in power, essentially in order to stay in power. I think, it could go either way. If Gaddafi falls within a couple of months, that'll be great and a happy ending for the NATO and US. If he doesn't, which means that they have to bargain, they have to negotiate with him over some kind of solution.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Mr. Yunus. Let me take that point. Let me take that point to my guest in Cairo, Samah Abdallah, Deputy Editor-in-Chief of Al-Ahram newspaper. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you hear me now very well, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. It's a great pleasure to be in your program.
Okay, sir, can you describe the situation now after issuing a warrant of arrest against the Libyan leader Muammar al-Qaddafi, or Colonel Muammar al-Qaddafi, his son, and his intelligent aide Abdullah Sanusi? Do you think that will complicate the situation in Libya, or that will help the people to take an advantage of such a decision by the ICC, the International Criminal Court?
I believe this is one way of putting more pressure on Gaddafi and his son and his some of his assistants to you know to have in order to make them behave in a certain way. Of course, we realize that NATO is a key player in what's going on in Libya, and members of NATO are most probably behind this warranty taken by the court, and that of course will have, as my colleague said earlier, some kind of psychological impact on them. But will that complicate the situation for them or not? I don't think so, because as much as I see the situation in Libya, we have some kind of a civil war. People that are supporting Gaddafi for one reason or another. He still has some troops fighting for him. Some of his people, at least as much as we see on the Libyan TV, are still, you know, shouting his name in the streets and so on. On the other hand, we have the opposition, those who are fighting to get rid of Gaddafi. So I don't think that such a decision taken by the court will either convince those who are supporting Gaddafi to go against him, or those who are opposing him to you know, to support him or whatever. So the situation is going to stay as it is. It might be changed, but it won't be changed just because the International Court of Justice has issued a warranty against him.
Okay, let me stay with you in Cairo. France also has decided to supply the Libyan opposition with arms in order to protect civilians against al-Qaddafi troops. It said that it perpetuated assault rifles and rocket launchers, as well as the humanitarian assistance into a mountainous areas southwest of Tripoli. Is this deemed to be a flagrant violation of the 1970 United Nations resolution, which imposed an embargo on weapons to Libya?
I don't care much about, you know, decisions taken by the UN or any other international organization, as in the international relations, you know, arena. Things are done based on other things, and this international law is only an issue that the weak partners are asked to follow or to take care of. But you know, when it comes to France, the United States, big countries like that, they always find a way to behave the way they like, and you know, put it in a legal way, or you know, as if they didn't go against the international law. I see what France is trying to do is a way of supporting the opposition, but as long as they are not supporting the opposition by enough weapons, whether it is France or any other international power, as long as they are not supporting them with enough weapons to be able to conquer those troops supporting Gaddafi, then we are wasting our time, and we like draw a lot of question marks about the real intentions of certain Western powers, including France. Because as I see it, you know, this kind of weapons is only going to give some kind of personal security, but won't be enough for these troops to overcome the current troops supporting Gaddafi.
That's a good point, Doctor. Now, my guest from Cairo, Mr. Abdallah, have spoken that even the weapons that France want to help are not going to be enough. And they are not letting in land troops to enter the country. So are you with Mr. Abdallah that he said it's only personal protection when you have a rifle and small rocket launchers.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be enough to deteriorate any offensive from the Colonel Gaddafi's side. So how can we equalize and how can we look at this situation?
Without the in ground actually and bring really military on the ground, I agree really with Dr. Sami what he said. And the most important thing in this war actually the interference of the United States actually. If the United States doesn't want to go really and bring a Gaddafi, this war will take long time, because as much France has power or European country has power, isn't like the United States power. Still all these countries actually using the United States Air Force actually in satellite way actually, and give it to the France or Europe, and they go by themselves. But we need the United States actually Air Force power or the ground power actually, and that will make the difference actually.
But both leaders, I mean David Cameron and all the leaders or the Western leaders. Let me take that question to Washington. First of all, I have two parts of the question, Mr. Yunus. The first part is we speak about the African Union leaders suggested that Addis Ababa, the Ethiopian capital, would host talks between conflict parties regarding reaching a ceasefire and forming a democratic government. How can they translate such suggestion into reality in your point of view? And are they powerful enough, the African Union, to do such a thing?
Well, I think what the African Union states what they try to do is find an exit strategy for Libyan leader Muammar, some sort of a way to come out of the corner that he was being cornered in. And I think that's the only way that Gaddafi could survive locally in Africa and in Libya, but not outside Africa, not outside Libya. And I think what happens on the ground militarily, if he is withstanding the pressure from NATO, if he is withstanding the pressure from the Libyan opposition, which means that he could support his negotiation position and force the Libyan opposition and force NATO to negotiate with him. So this is one venue, one strategy he is pushing for through his African allies. The other strategy is to win actually and to push the Libyan rebels behind further east toward Benghazi and other eastern cities he had lost. And this way he will negotiate a better as well. He will negotiate with NATO to stop the air power and perhaps give them concessions over many other issues. This is what losing dictators are interested in, staying in power. They're not interested in maintaining the sovereignty of their country or maintaining the well-being of their people. They're only interested in staying in power for themselves and their families, and we have seen many other Arab leaders have done the same thing, and other African leaders as well.
Mr. Abdullah in Cairo, Mr. Sami Abdullah, do you think the issuing of the warrant of arrest from the ICC, the International Criminal Court, complicated the situation in your point of view in Libya, or they could have waited a while until the people now, Muammar al-Gaddafi has no choice but to fight until, because we heard a while ago, Saif al-Islam, the son of, he said, we'll never leave the country, we'll never surrender, we will stay and fight until the last drop of blood. Do you think that decision came little early, or you think it's in the right procedure?
I can't, say exactly whether it is early or late or whatever, but I don't think that it has complicated the situation. As you know, that has always been the stance of Gaddafi since the whole issue started. He said that he's not going to leave Libya, he's not going to resign, he's not going to leave power, and he's going to fight till the very last drop of his blood. That's what he said. And I believe him, because such a person that has been ruling his country for like 4 decades, and he was like, everything in this country, is the only one that you hear his name Exactly, one-man show. Even yeah, you know, the members of parliament over there, they were not. I mean, the speaker would not mention their names if he's asking one of the members to make comments on what they are discussing. He would mention a number, so he would say number 55, please speak. And even you know, the government members, they were not, you know, their names were not mentioned a lot. We would only read or hear their title. I don't know whatever he is responsible for. He has very special, you know, titles for ministers over there. So he was the only person, you know, we hear his name in all over Libya. He is the, you know, given the power by, I don't know, certain powers that we don't know where does it come from. He is the one that has liberated Libya, and he's the one that has made the Libyan people, I don't know, brought the dignity for them. And you know, he had this kind of I would say illusions. So such a person would not easily give up power or just accept to be a second person in a country, not to be you know, a normal person, but even he won't accept to be a second in a regime. So things are not complicated because of this decision. Things are complicated because of the personality of Gaddafi. Yes, he is either going to win or he is going to totally disappear. I don't think that he even has a chance to leave the country. I mean, personal chance. He won't accept such a thing. He's, you know, he's above normal people. He cannot be treated like, you know, yeah, a normal citizen.
Okay.
So if it is complicated, it's because of his personality.
Because of his personality. Let me go to Washington with Yunus. Mr. Yunus, also Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, the last week or last Saturday in Madrid, she spoke in a press conference. Let me translate it because I have it in Arabic. She said, instead of just, you know, sending these threats to Europe and you will take the war to the Mediterranean and to Europe, you should leave your country in order to make it easier for transformation to democracy. What did she mean? How did you read what she said in Madrid?
Well, for Hillary Clinton, I think for this U.S. administration, the position regarding all the revolutions in the Arab world has been apples and oranges. It's conflicting. They support one here in words, and they support one there in terms of logistics and air power over Libya. So, but what they mean, it represents how this administration is confused, but also is complicated by President Obama's reluctance of engaging in military operations in the Middle East. Obama, since 2007 and 2008, have expressed the opinion that he will withdraw from Iraq and Afghanistan, and he will not focus on the Middle East, either as a peace strategy or as a war strategy. So they're not interested in Libya from a war perspective or deposing Gaddafi perspective. And that's why we see the U.S. involvement with Libya is subordinate to NATO, and let NATO take the lead. And also because of legal considerations here in the U.S. The president does not have the legal authority to engage in war without the permission of the U.S. Congress. Of course, there are two things here, the War Powers Act and the War Power Resolutions. They are two legal entities, but they are, however, related. And that's why you see a fight between the U.S. Congress and President Obama. But Obama argues that we are not engaged head-on with Libya. We are in a supporting role with NATO. And that's why, because he doesn't want the Congress to stop U.S. involvement in Libya. And that's why you see statements by Hillary Clinton and Robert Gates and President Obama himself. They are supporting freedom, democracy, and Gaddafi must go, Assad must go, this guy must go, or not. But they're not actively engaged in forceful rhetoric to depose this leader or that leader. This is no longer the strategy for the U.S.
You brought a good point. We listened a while ago to Obama during the report, if you saw it with me. He was speaking about Colonel Gaddafi, that he was against the civilians of the United States. I mean, he referred back to Lockerbie and some atrocities done in the past. Do you think that point will give the administration, the U.S. administration, power or a push by the Congress to participate in such a war?
No, I don't think so, because President Obama is prohibited by law from engaging in hostilities over Libya by the U.S. Congress.
Unless
he has the
approved by-
power, but the Constitution says, he has to inform Congress and he has to get permission from Congress. And this is what George Bush the first and George Bush the second have done in Iraq and Kuwait. They get the have to Congress agreement and approval to engage in power. Obama, on the other hand, argues this was not a war. This is not a war. This is not even measured as minor war, because under the Constitution, the President of the United States has the legal power to engage in a limited military operation, such as when President Reagan done when he conducted an air raid against Libya. That's the only limitations and the only permissible situation in which the President of the United States could engage.
The idea is clear. Also, Professor Ibrahim, it's David Cameron a while ago said we will put a pressure on Gaddafi and it's a matter of time to be removed, so for him to leave. Do you think that will happen?
But
a matter of time?
A matter of time, but what is the pressure he means by? Is
by
it
air
not
superiority, by air striking?
Yeah.
Do you think it is enough?
I don't think so. Without entering on the ground, that will not happen. But Cameron must take the two positions, actually. One position that the European Union actually position, and he want to stand with France and Germany and other countries to be in the way. If Gaddafi removed, he will have some interest in Libya, and in the same position he want to have the USA actually position and stay in the middle. So he is doing something, and these European countries actually face a financial actually problem there, and the war need a lot of money. Does the European Union have that money? They face a problem right now with Greece. What about having a
financial crisis?
Financial crisis. Actually, it's many ways to do this war, but they face actually in the same way many problems inside their countries.
Okay, let me go to Mr. Abdullah in Cairo. Mr. Abdullah, let me ask you. Also, Mahmoud Shammam, the Speaker of the Transitional Council in Libya, spoke and he criticized the role of Russia, as they have, sent weaponry to the colonial regime, and he appreciated the Nicolas Sarkozy's role also in supporting or giving a hand to the revolutionists. In your point of view, why Russia is playing such a role? Why Russia stands always against the West? Is it a different situation, or they just wanted to be against the West? Or in your point of view as a political analyst, why do they have, or do they stand usually against the decisions taken by NATO?
Because Russia is not a member of NATO, and on the contrary, NATO somehow is playing some kind of a role to contain Russia and sometimes even China. So it's normal for Russia to go against NATO as long as they are not part of this. On the other hand, if we go through the Russian position towards a lot of issues that the West, were part of during the last few years, we would see the situation always start with Russia opposing, and then at a certain point they agree, the Russians, they agree with the West, and perhaps they reach some kind of agreement, and the Russians get some compensation, some other, in a certain way. So I believe that might be the case over here.
Okay.
When it comes to weapons sold for Colonel Gaddafi's regime, I think it's just a commercial,
ties.
How to say it?
Okay.
Agreement, to sell some weapons.
Sir,
It might support.
I have 3 minutes. I will give you 1 minute, sir. In your point of view, how a peaceful solution can be reached to stop bloodshed in Libya? Give me a conclusion.
there is no peaceful solution available unless NATO goes away or doesn't get involved in what's going on, and we leave the Libyans to each other, and perhaps we would support some kind of reconciliation. Would that be in the benefit?
Then we will have no
would that
Libyan.
be in the... Sorry?
Then we will have no Libyans because Al-Qaddafi will take good care of it, and I'm sure.
No. What I'm saying is, if we are looking for a peaceful solution, this is the only way to do it. But would that be something that NATO would like to see, or others would like to support? This is another issue. But as long as NATO is involved, and as long as they are supporting one side against the other, as long as they are putting pressure on the other side, which is Gaddafi, then it's only military actions that we are going to see. Will it be able to end this conflict or not? This is another story again.
Okay. Dr. Ibrahim, I gave you the shortest time tonight. I do apologize, but also the same question goes to you. What is the solution in Libya right now? People are dying, bloodshed is everywhere. The NATO is involved, as Mr. Abdullah said. Either they leave, and then if they leave, they will leave the Libyan people alone to this hard regime. In your point of view, what should happen for a successful outcome?
For international countries actually to make a lot of, more pressure and supporting Libyan people on ground, actually giving them many support in military ways or weapons or any of these things, and focusing the Air Force actually focusing on really Al-Qaddafi palace or where he stay and try to really kill him.
The hideouts.
Yes.
Because even in the report a while ago we heard that he's never outside, he will never appear. He's like becoming like Bin Laden, sending cassettes here and there.
Yes, and they can do that.
Well, at the end of this program, dear viewers, I want to thank all my guests from Washington, Ali Yunus, a writer and a political analyst, and from Cairo, Sameh Abdullah, the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of Al-Ahram newspaper, and last but not the least, Dr. Professor Ibrahim Nahas, Professor of Political Science at King Saud University, and for the first time the first part of the program, Ali Nasruddin from Paris, a journalist and a political analyst. Also, I want to thank my director, Hiyam Al-Kilani, and the entire crew of Political Agenda. Thank you.